Everyone, and welcome back to our last part of lecture 6 on supply chain coordination strategies. And time is flying fast, and this is already our third last lecture. So after this video, we'll be talking about lecture 7, which are more of a also strategic lecture. And lecture 8 will be about global supply chain management, sustainability, and globalization. Okay, so if we do a brief recap on what we learned last part, so we basically went through some fundamental principles and strategies for this coordination to take place. I think you guys all understood that coordination isn't easy. It's pretty hard, and but once it is built effectively, coordination can bring a lot of benefits. And we talked about the two fundamental principles. The first of them is the total profit after coordination delivered to the participants have to be higher than before, and the total individual profit for each participant have to also increase when we implemented coordination. And for strategy, we gave a kind of a quick start on mass customization, and I promised I will be discussing more of a mass customization in detail in our lecture 7. Okay, so now we're going to start with our main topic of this video today, which is minimizing the mismatch between supply and demand. So minimizing the mismatch is definitely important. So let's first talk about what is supply and demand. So supply is basically the willingness to supply the goods or services by the supplier, and demand is basically how much customers how much customer want to buy a product. So I want to clear adopt in demand because demand only means if you want to buy a product that you can afford. For example, if there's a Lamborghini costing $3 million, I think many people want to buy this Lamborghini, but they don't have money, so that doesn't mean demand. Even if that increases, that doesn't mean we have higher demand, because that means companies are not able to sell the product since people cannot afford. So by demand, we basically mean how much people want as of the products they must be able to afford. So how much affordable products do customers want? That's the best explanation. And if you learned a bit of economics, just principle of economics back in high school, you know the supply set that as variables, which means we're keeping other factors the same. Supply increases when the selling price increases because supplier more willing to make money with high prices, and the demand keeping other factors the same. Demand increases when the price decreases, which means this is because people want to buy basically in cheaper price. So that's about the supply and law of the supply and law of demand in a nutshell. And now let's talk about two scenarios where mismatch can happen. So the first scenario is S is larger than D. This means the supply is larger than demand, which is a situation when companies are holding excessive inventories, when there are more products to be able to be offered to the customers, but the customers do not want to buy the much products, and the business are kind of wasting their stock, wasting their inventories. So S larger than D isn't a good thing if the business has already stocked up too much inventories. And our second scenario is supply is less than demand, which means basically demand larger than supply. This means there's less products than what customers are willing to buy. So in this case, it's usually more optimistic compared to supply larger than demand, because this means customers are actually able to so businesses are actually able to raise the price since the demand is higher than supply. So maybe there's more competition within the customers. So whoever buy with a higher price will get the product. So that's a fundamental principle. But actually, both of them are not really good depending on your situation. So we have two costs due to the mismatch, which we refer to as overstocking cost and understocking cost. So overstocking cost happens when the supply is larger than demand, which is a situation where I'm holding too much inventories. Because since the supply is larger than demand, we have to even each customer buys our product, we still have some leftover. And if these are perishable goods, especially meat, vegetables, fruits, and probably for example some rice or so on, these products will be perished. So it means you're actually kind of wasting your inventories. For some products, it can be a bit okay, like computers, it can wait about a few months, it's fine. Like 1 to 2 months should be okay. So it definitely depends on your product. What's the type of product will decide how much cost will incur from the inventories in the situation. So this is about perishable products, non-perishable products. But in a nutshell, we say when the supply is larger than demand, is usually quite I would say it's quite pessimistic, because that actually means you're having excess inventories. and competition is quite high, because when supply is lower than demand, for small businesses they usually have to lower the price, because otherwise no one is going to buy from the businesses. So they tend to lower the price, and the consequence of lowering the prices, after that the business is making less profit or even making losses just to bring customer loyalty. And understocking cost happens when the supply is lower than demand. This means business can lose potential sales, because since they're not able to supply what customers want, so they're actually losing the potential opportunity to make profit, since they're not launching the products into the market if they do not hold any inventory at this point of time, or they're applying some make-to-order inventory, so they don't have enough to supply in the market. And second way is they can lose their loyalty and damage their reputation, because once they are not able to launch the product into the market, customers may get irritated, they lose patience, so they are they are not going to buy again from a company. They are not going to have a repetitive purchases later on. So you're damaged, and there's no recommendation. So basically, if you are understocking, you can lead to both two of these issues: sales loss and loyalty loss. But overall, I would say supply lower than demand is more optimistic. First of all, the reason is you are not going to lose a lot of cost. You may lose sales, but you are not directly losing money, losing your cash. But on the other hand, if you're overstocking and no one wants to buy it from you, you're actually losing much more, since you cannot convert your inventory into cash. So in this case, your inventories are illiquidified, so they are not able to be liquidified back into cash. So these are the two scenarios I want to talk to you guys. And there's also a situation, pardon me, there's also a scenario when there's a supply is equal to demand. That doesn't mean it's the best way. It means it's kind of a balance, it's kind of a compromise, it's kind of equilibrium of supply and demand, but it's not really optimistic as well, because in the market fluctuates a lot. There's never a optimistic point in the market. So when the market fluctuates a lot, even supply is equal to demand, you may still make wrong inventory decisions. Pardon me. You may still make wrong decisions because you may still make wrong decisions because you may predict that the demand will increase next week, but it didn't do it. It didn't increase. So when it's S equal to D, it doesn't mean that it's optimistic, because the market can fluctuate at an immediate amount of time, it can fluctuate anytime, and customers' preferences changing every second as well. So this is explanation of the two scenarios. Now let's go through the reasons why mismatch of demand supply occurs. So three main reasons into three categories, which are external, internal, environmental reasons. So external reasons are basically changes in customer requirements or needs. So when a customer changes its taste, your products must be flexible, because otherwise no one wants to buy your product. That's why our lectures are closely linked to each other. In our first lecture, second lecture, we mentioned before it's important to keep flexibility in order to be responsive, to be able to cope and tackle uncertainties in the market. I've also mentioned before that it is also advisable, it is also advisory to implement the CFT approach, core-setting functioning approach, because CFT approach actually allow you to have more flexibility, although it can be a bit risky, and although it can increase your cost. So in this case, this is what happens if there's no flexibility, or just customers' tastes are changing fast and you're already stocking up with inventories. So in this case, you're going to lose sales, definitely, because today the demand may be higher than the supply, tomorrow the preference change. So if you have produced the same product and you are holding the same product, identical product inside your warehouses, it's very unlikely, it may be very likely that your products are wasted because customers' tastes have changed. Taking an example, the fidget spinner. Back in middle school, fidget spinner is like one of the top popular toy across the world, across the States, across Asia, across Europe. But the fidget spinner wasn't popular for a long time. It was only popular for about 3 months, and after 3 months, it kind of went extinct. No one wanted to buy. It wasn't as hot as before. Basically, the trend and this wave has went away. The wave has gone. So you always have to keep in mind, even if you believe this product will have a high demand, you should make these predictions that whether the product will still have high demand after I produce. For example, now we're at April 2020, and in April 2020, product A is popular, and we're planning to produce this product for release in July or June. But we're unlikely whether July or June this product will still be popular, so you have to make sure your forecasts are correct, and you have to make sure you should reduce a bit of your inventory, keep low inventory, and make this product flexible, so you're not going to waste your inventories when the popularity, the wave has gone, when it reached July or June. So that's basically the idea. And the second reason for external mismatch is demand uncertainty, which is similar to the first reason. I would say the same meaning, because market fluctuates, customer taste fluctuate. And now, internally, there are three main reasons for this to happen. First of all, is the inability to gather accurate demand information. Sometimes we are not able to gather correct information and it may be misleading. I will discuss this in detail when we go through a bullwhip effect, which is an inventory effect happening commonly among many businesses. Basically, many businesses are incapable to gather accurate demand information. It's pretty hard. The data doesn't come to you like an online survey that organized pretty well perfectly, because sometimes your demand have to undergo some risk, undergo some own bets. You have to make this forecast so it can be inaccurate. And secondly is the inability to plan and schedule better with a given forecasting. This is a pretty important reason to keep in mind. Sometimes even if we predicted the correct reason, we might not be able to plan and schedule our production of our products, the distribution of our product, the supplying side of our product to make sure our product do produce at the time we want them to be produced, and they are sold in the time we wanted them to be sold. For example, I predicted July is the best time to sell fidget spinner, but I could not plan my production very well. Maybe there's quality defect, so I was unable to sell my products on July, but operation has already begun, so my product was released on September. Unfortunately, in September the product wasn't popular anymore, so then I basically lost a chance. I've wasted all the inventory, I've wasted all the manufacturing cost inside this thing. So you have to make sure. I think this is better for bigger businesses. For small and medium-sized businesses, you have to make sure you're able to plan and schedule better with a given forecasting. If you're not able to, which are pretty common, pretty acceptable for small businesses, try to reduce your inventory. It is better to make less money than to waste a lot from your inventories when you cannot liquidify your inventories back into cash. Okay, so these are about internal reasons. And third reason for internal mismatch is the inability to develop new products at the right time. So sometimes it's not about forecasting, it's about developing a new product. You want to make a innovation, which is definitely encouraged in the market today. I mentioned before, innovative new products are more competitive in the market, are more sustainable, which means they are able to last longer in average compared to these more olden kind of copycat products. However, you have to make sure you are able to develop these products and release them to the customer at the right time when it is going to be popular and when it is going to be high in demand. Otherwise, the new product may not make any sense. And this part is pretty difficult for small businesses because small businesses may lack of technical skills. Even if they have certain technical skills, they might not have a perceived brand image. They have a bad customer loyalty. They haven't built their customer loyalty yet, brand reputation yet. So it may be a bit hard to innovate your products and make them welcomed by the customers when you just enter the market. So this should be pretty straightforward. Environmentally, on the environmental point of view, there are three main reasons for the mismatch to happen. First of all is technological changes. So technology, which in a theoretical point of view is always beneficial to a business because it is capable to reduce the cost. It is also capable to have an automatic 24/7 automatic job flow production to be achieved. So I will agree with this because in business studies we always learn that technology is beneficial to businesses in the market. But however, it really depends. Sometimes people hold too much inventory just because they implement some certain technologies. And I mentioned before, excessive inventories can be highly disadvantageous, can be highly damaging if they don't get sold. So on the technological point of view, what you have to be careful is it's not about implement technologies right or wrong. I think use technologies always correct for me. But the problem is when you use technology, you have to be careful and control the amount of inventories you want to make. Sometimes you're able to make produce product fairly quick, so you want to produce more in a given amount of time. But I mentioned before, mismatch can happen, fluctuates happen, changes in uncertainty also happens, uncertainties arise. So make sure when you apply technology, produce with control and with give a forecast with some risk management. Okay, so that's about the technology. Your cost you have to pay in terms of implementing technology inside your business. And the second reason is competition. I want to mention an example. So for competition, what does it mean is when many businesses are making the same product, for example, fast food, some companies may experience supply equal to demand. Some companies may experience demand larger than supply. Some businesses may experience supply larger than demand. So that's why you have to be careful when you are forecasting. For example, McDonald's may be popular, so the supply may be lower than demand, which means more people want to buy McDonald's burgers than the availability of the raw materials able to provide the burgers. But that doesn't mean the whole fast food industry is like the demand larger than supply thing. Because for example, if I am a fast food small business, young business into the fast food industry, I've just begun my burger and fries business, and it is very highly likely for me to experience supply larger than demand, because it's unlikely to have for me to have a lot of customers in the first year, since I'm the new fast food industry. So that means when you are, I cannot compare to KFC, Burger King, McDonald's. That means when you are making a product, when you are doing forecasting, you should focus on the particular product, but you also should connect your forecasting with your company. If your company is quite big, is prominent, it has a stable customer base, that may mean when the product rises, the demand rises, you can increase your inventory by maybe 5 to 10%, depend. Then you're able to make money. But if you are a pretty young business, you are not sure whether you can make money or not. You are still struggling with finding customers. So in this point of view, I believe it is better if you take control and control inventories with the connection of your forecast, along with your forecast. And thirdly is microeconomic forces. So sometimes microeconomically we can have economic recession that can cause something not about the price, but cause people income to decrease and cause people spending habits to change. For example, the 2007 economic recession, people are not willing to buy a lot, the income decreased, and also many businesses are went bankrupt. So in this point of view, these are unavoidable circumstances, or you can say they are natural disasters, like coronavirus. So in when these scenarios happen, when you're under these circumstances, the best way for you just to reduce the inventory, don't waste and try to make small profits. At least you can try to make some profits rather than losing money and running out of cash. However, what I want to emphasize is for these microeconomic forces, you always have some time to observe the market before you are actually making changes. For example, for economic recession, that doesn't happen like tomorrow, like today I sleep, tomorrow I wake up, economic recession happens, the stock market just crash. It doesn't happen that fast. So you usually have certain period, although it might not be so slow, but there's always a slow. You always go from up to down. It's not like direct, drastic one day period. You may go for a few months, it may go at least for a few weeks. So at least you are able to lower your inventories during this period of time to make sure you're not wasting your inventories. Same for inflation. Inflation is also microeconomic forces, which means average price can increase. It depends on whether it's good inflation or bad. If it's a good inflation, about 2 to 5%, maybe we can perceive it as a benefit, an optimistic thing for our businesses, because we might be able to sell products at premium prices. But usually, sometimes inflation are bad. Once it's out of maybe 5 to 7% or even higher than 10% inflation. In this point of view, the government is going to reduce the interest, going to leverage interest rate, going to leverage the tax. So in these circumstances, you have to be prepared that you are not going to make as much profit as in the normal environment, because people don't have the demand will decrease because they are unable to afford many products. They have to change their spending habit. Maybe they are buy more essential products rather than buying luxury products, especially if you are working in a luxury company. So in this point of view, you should reduce the inventory. But same thing again, I believe there are always some time for you to observe. So you're not going to experience a drastic failure just in one day. You can take actions when you observe there's certain inflation going on. How do you observe inflation? A little bit of advice. You look at the range of goods. We call it as a basket of goods. You should not only look at one good. When the price increases, that doesn't mean inflation, because that means maybe the company just wanting to make more money. But when the real inflation happens, it basically means all the goods, many goods in the market, even the different categories, maybe fruits, computers, luxurious products, they are all experiencing price increase. When this happens, or you can see government reports or economic reports or stock market report, when these things happen, when many products are increasing their price at the same time, then it is pretty likely that you are having inflation, your country is having inflation. So then in this point of time, you should decrease your inventory. Okay, so these are the reasons about a mismatch. And now let's summarize our goals in supply chain management. First of all, we'll try to minimize mismatch. Taking account of these factors, we'll try to be cautious, control, be able to implement and compromise different skills. For example, you should compromise between forecasting and planning, and you should compromise between forecasting and your own company situation. You should compromise between forecasting and as well as your own capability. So these are the things you can take account, and also some strategies may include lecture 5 we discussed in the last lecture. We'll talk about CFT approach, and you should always go deeper and think about different strategies, 30 different strategies for you to increase flexibility to tackle uncertainties in the market. But however, that doesn't mean you have to increase flexibility at every single time. If in a particular point of time there's very low uncertainty, why not just use sequential approach? Why not just decrease the cost spending on uncertainty and increasing controllability, increase your efficiency? Although the aim is to increase efficiency and flexibility at the same time, as we mentioned in lecture 2, but during a period with low uncertainties, it is okay if you want to increase your efficiency. But when you increase your efficiency, the problem you have to be cautious of is definitely the waste of inventories, waste of excessive inventories. It may have this problem. The problem may be incurred if there may incur when there's changes in customer requirements. Okay, so that's pretty much about why mismatch occurs. And now we move on to our last slide in this lecture. So here, let's talk about just a summarize of different strategies to take. So when the aggregate demand is larger than supply, usually the capacity increase, and you should refocus the target market. What do you mean by refocus on target market? Because it is demand larger than supply is more optimistic than supply larger than demand. This means you can refocus on target market, whether it's possible for you to increase your inventory in this point of time to basically get more sales. And you have to, although the demand is larger than supply, I mentioned before in the McDonald's example, you have to take account of your own capability. So for example, McDonald's is a global business, but maybe my business is only serving my town, my small town back in Singapore. So then I have to focus on my target market, whether the people in my town are also increasing the demand. Because sometimes aggregate demand is gathered from the average, which means maybe Shanghai's demand is high, Beijing's demand is high, Shenzhen's demand is high, but in my city, in China, maybe the demand is not high. So you have to be careful of that. And when aggregate demand is lower than supply, you have to reduce your capacity. Definitely try to reduce your inventory, stop producing your inventory, get the inventory sold as soon as possible. Don't wait for price rise, because depending on the trend, if the trend is going down, going even worse, why not just sell it off if you can get a kind of okay price? And generate market demand as well. You should demand management. You should not only wait. You should also think about ways to generate demand. You can try to lower your price. Sometimes lower your price may still mean you can make a profit, because it just means the profit is less. But for some businesses, maybe lowering the price means they're not going to make profit anymore, so you'll incur loss. So both of them are possible, and you should put your efforts into generating demand and new product development as well to get satisfaction of the customers. Invest in the long run, basically, although it can be expensive. And the product mix point of view, value of flexibility is very high. And in terms of supply chain coordination, you should implement this so-called risk-based production planning. Postponement, we'll discuss then later, which means you try to reduce the risk by producing a product later. It can still be risky, but it is a way that can reduce the risk of customer unsatisfaction. But there's also the risk that your product will not be popular in the market. I mentioned before, something like the fidget spinner. Okay. Okay, moreover, abundant data available, you should also conduct qualitative and quantitative method research. For example, regression analysis, which is a correlation analysis, and you can also look for expert opinion. So these are also okay. So this is pretty much about this lecture. We went through about mismatch and uncertainties. So I'll see you guys in lecture 7. And if you have any questions, please comment below.